Hello and welcome back to, or welcome to my channel. Today I have quite a big crochet project in store for you. It's actually very simple. It's just a very long piece. So as I'm sure you can see in the thumbnail, today we are going to be making an entire crochet dress. As I mentioned, this is actually so much easier to make than you may think. It is just 2 giant panels, and I'm going to walk you through the entire process. I will also explain to you how to get the measurements just right so you can make a dress that fits you perfectly. So let's go ahead and jump right into the tutorial for this crochet maxi dress. For this tutorial, I will be using weight 4 cotton yarn, and for the main part of the dress, I am using this gorgeous sort of purpley pink yarn, and then for the top part, I will be using this white yarn, but you can use as many colors as you want to, and you can switch colors whenever you want to. So I'm using weight 4 cotton yarn, and then I will also be using a 5mm crochet hook. So I'm going to go ahead and get my first skein of yarn, and let's just go ahead and get started. So I'm going to start this project by just making a chain, and we are working from the bottom up, and we're also going to be making the dress in 2 separate panels. So we're going to make the front panel and then the back panel of the dress, and we make both panels identically. So I'm just going to show you how to make one panel, and then you're just going to copy and paste for the other side. So the most important thing to note when you're making this dress is to write down all of the numbers. So whatever number you decide to chain for the base here, write that down. However many rows you do, write that down and track down the number of rows you are doing. That way you can do an exact replica for the back or the front of the dress, because you want each side of the dress to be identical. So keep a little piece of paper or your phone with you and write down every single number and the number of rows that you're doing for the panel. That way you can replicate the exact same thing for the other side. So I'm going to go ahead and just start by making a slip knot, and as I mentioned, we are starting from the bottom and working our way up. So this is going to be the bottom hem of the dress. So I'm going to go ahead and start by making my chain for that. So for reference, before we dive into the actual crocheting, I wanted to show you what it is that we are currently making. That way you can kind of gauge for yourself how many rows you want to do and how big you want the chain to be, because this really is just going to differ on how it's going to fit with your body type and how tall you are. So for reference, I am about 5'8", and I'm making about a size medium, and I want this dress to go all the way down to like the top of my feet. This is what we are currently making. We have not completed the arms or the top of here where it's white. We've just done the base part, but this part goes up like kind of right under my arms, and then the rest of the dress falls all the way down to about the top of my feet. And the first part of this dress is treble crochet, the next part is double crochet, and then the last part is linked double crochet. So it's a little bit more light and airy at the bottom with a looser treble crochet stitch, and then it gradually gets a little bit tighter as we do the double crochet and then the linked double crochet. So the amount of rows that you do for each of these stitches may differ for what height you are at, and I will show you in each step how long I did for each one on my body so you can see for how long you want to be for yours. I hope this is all making sense. But in terms of making that starting chain, because we are chaining at the very bottom, so we're starting at the bottom of the dress and we are chaining for this part here, which I did a chain of 88. Just think that you do want it to be a little bit on the bigger side, because these stitches are quite loose, and then as we keep going, the stitches are going to tighten, and therefore the crochet will tighten. So to keep this part of the dress from being too tight, you want the bottom to be a little bit looser, and then you have some room to move, to walk, that you're not actually tripping on the dress. So what I would recommend is to find a dress in your closet that you already generally like the shape of, or just a skirt, anything that you like this part of the dress, and then measure the length along the bottom here, and then use that measurement, making a gauge swatch or just kind of eyeballing it to then decide how many chains you want for the bottom of the dress. So I did that with this dress. I did a measurement and then I kind of roughly eyeballed it and ended up going with 88 chains. When in doubt, just go a little bit bigger rather than a little bit smaller. So now let's go ahead and make our chain of 88 and get started on the front panel of the dress. So as I have explained, I have decided to do a chain of 88. So I'm going to go ahead and make this chain of 88, and then I'll see you once I'm done with that. But you just want to go ahead and make a chain with whatever length you have determined that you need for your dress. So after completing that chain of 88, I'm going to chain an additional 3 to act as our turning chain. So I'm going to chain 1, 2, and 3. I'm then going to yarn over twice, and I'm going to go into that first chain before we chain 3. So I'm going 3 chains down, and then into that 4th chain I'm inserting my hook, so right before we made that turning chain. And then I'm going to pick up some yarn, so I now have 4 loops on my hook. I'm going to yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. So that is how you complete a treble crochet, and the very bottom of this dress is going to be made up of treble crochet because it's going to be a lot looser and more airy, so it's going to help to keep the dress from just weighing down and being way too heavy. So we're going to do a couple rows of just treble crochet. So again, I yarn over twice, and then I'm going to insert my hook right into the next chain stitch here, pick up some yarn and pull it through that chain stitch, pick up some yarn, pull it through 2 loops, pick up some yarn, pull it through 2 loops, and then pick up some yarn and pull it through 2 loops. So there's our first 2 treble crochet stitches completed, and now I'm just going to go ahead and place a treble crochet stitch into every single one of these chain stitches all the way down this chain. So in total I should have 88 treble crochet stitches. So I'm going to go ahead and complete this first row here of treble crochet, and I'll see you once I've placed a stitch into every single one of these chain stitches here. Okay, so I've now completed that entire row there of treble crochets, and now we're just basically going to repeat the exact same thing. This dress is mostly just going to be repetitive rows of treble crochet and then double crochet and then linked double crochet, but for right now we're just doing treble crochet. So at the end of a row of treble crochet, you want to chain 3 for our turning chain. So after chaining 3, I'm then going to turn my work and then repeat that exact same thing where I'm going to yarn over twice, insert my hook right into that very first stitch, pick up some yarn, pull through 2, pull through 2, and pull through 2. So I'm just going to go ahead and do another row here of treble crochet, and the number of rows that you do is really up to you. I have found for this dress pattern that 15 rows of treble crochet is a good height for me before I then go on to doing a new stitch, but you can do as many rows of the treble crochet as you want. I'm going to go ahead and just repeat this same process, just placing a treble crochet into every single stitch all the way to the end of the row, and I'm going to go ahead and do 15 rows of treble crochet before coming back where we can then move on to our next stitch. So here I have completed all 15 rows of the treble crochet, which for reference with 15 rows that is about 12 inches here, and for myself that comes up just below my knees. So again, you can do as many rows as you want to, but 15 rows here brings it just below my knees at 12 inches long. So now we're going to go ahead and switch over to double crochet. So at the end of my last row of treble crochet, instead of chaining 3 as my turning chain, I'm going to chain 2 because we're now doing double crochets, and double crochets only requires 2 chains at the end of the row. So I've now chained 2, and then I'm turning my work, and now we're just going to do the exact same thing we just did with the treble crochets, only this time double crochet. So instead I yarn over once, insert my hook into the first stitch, pick up some yarn, pull through 2, pick up some yarn, pull through 2, completing a double crochet. So now into every single one of these stitches all the way down the row, I'm going to go ahead and place double crochets, and I'm going to repeat this for, I want to say, another 15 rows. Again, you can go for as long as you want to. You can do as many rows as you want to with this double crochet, but I'm just going to do another 15 rows now with the double crochet, and you may notice that the double crochet is a little bit tighter than the treble crochet, so you may notice that your panel is going to slightly shrink in at the sides, which is totally okay, and it's actually good for the shape of the dress. So don't worry if it looks like the panel of the dress is shrinking on the sides or if it's changing shape a little bit, because these stitches are going to be a little bit tighter than the treble crochet. But otherwise, I'm just going to go ahead and complete about 15 complete rows here with double crochet, and then I'll see you once I'm done with that. So I have now completed all 15 rows here of the double crochet, which brings the panel to about 19 inches long, which is just right above my knees for reference. So now going forward, I want to make sure the material is going to be full coverage, because now I'm going from my knees up, so I want all the material from that point up to be full coverage and not to have all these gaps that you can see we have in the treble and the double crochet. So I am now going to switch to doing a stitch called linked double crochet, which is very similar to normal double crochet, only we're going to be linking each stitch to the one prior, which gets rid of all the gaps in the fabric. So let me show you how to do that stitch. So I'm going to cast back on here at the end of my row, like so, and now just like with normal double crochet, at the end of the row I'm going to chain 2 before turning my work. And now, unlike normal double crochet, instead of just inserting my hook right into the first stitch like so, I'm actually going to go to that chain 2 we just made, and I'm going to insert my hook into the first of those 2 chains, or the last, whichever way you're counting, but the very first chain off of the project here, I'm inserting my hook into that chain stitch, like so. and then I'm going to pick up some yarn and pull it through that chain stitch. So I now have 2 loops there on my hook, and then I'm going to insert my hook into the very first stitch of the row like so, pick up some yarn and pull it through. So I now have 3 loops on my hook, and now I can complete a double crochet by pulling through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. Like so. So that is our first linked double crochet completed, and now when you look at this stitch, you should be able to tell that there are 2 almost horizontal, they're a little bit more at a diagonal right now, but 2 horizontal bars of yarn. There's one at the top of the stitch here, so the very top of the stitch you can see this little bar of yarn, and then if you go a little bit lower you'll see another bar of yarn going across or kind of at an angle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go top down, so I'm tipping my hook and I'm going to go underneath that bar of yarn, so I'm scooping up right underneath that bar of yarn that's about halfway down the stitch like so, and then I pick up some yarn and pull it through that loop, and then I insert my hook into the next stitch, pick up some yarn and pull it through that stitch. So I have 3 loops on my hook, and then pick up some yarn, pull through 2, pick up some yarn, pull through 2. So we're basically just doing double crochets, but instead of yarning over, we're getting that extra loop of yarn from the stitch prior. That way each stitch is linked to the one prior and there's no gaps in between the stitch. So again, you can see here on this stitch that there are 2 bars of yarn. There's the top horizontal bar of yarn, and then sort of in the middle of the stitch, if you go a little bit lower, you'll see that second horizontal bar of yarn. So again, I'm tipping my hook from the top down, I'm inserting my hook through that strand or bar of yarn, picking up some yarn and pulling it right through like so. And then I'm going to insert my hook into the very next stitch like so, pick up some yarn, so I now have 3 loops on my hook, and then pull through 2 and pull through 2. So that is how you do a linked double crochet stitch. And so again, I'm just going top down into that horizontal bar, picking up some yarn, inserting my hook into the next stitch, pick up some yarn, and then pull through 2, pull through 2. And I'm just going to repeat this for the entirety of this row here, and just like with the other double crochets, the linked double crochet is going to be a little bit of a tighter stitch compared to the double crochet. So again, you may notice that your project is kind of cinching in a little bit on the sides, but that is okay. That's actually perfect for the shape of the dress. So if you notice that it is tightening on the sides and it isn't a perfectly straight line because we're switching to a tighter stitch, just like when we switch to the double crochet, that is totally okay. So I'm going to go ahead and just do these linked double crochet stitches all the way down the entirety of this row here, and then I'll see you once I reach the end of the row. So I'm now just doing the last stitch here for the row, and now at the end of this row I'm going to chain 2 and turn my work, and just like we did before, I'm going to start by inserting my hook into the first chain, or the chain that is closest to the actual body of the project, so the first of those 2 chains that we made. I'm inserting my hook, picking up some yarn, and then inserting my hook into the very first stitch of the row, and then completing a linked double crochet that I can then go top down into that horizontal bar, pick up some yarn, go into the next stitch and do a linked double crochet. So that's how you're going to start the row every time, is you're going to start by chaining 2 and then inserting your hook into the first of those 2 chains to then start the linked double crochets. And I'm going to go ahead and complete about 33 rows here of linked double crochet. You want to just keep on going until this panel is long enough that it reaches your waist. So I'm going to do 33 rows, which will bring this panel up to my waistline. So I have now completed all 33 rows of the linked double crochet, and for reference, it is now about 33 inches long, and this entire panel lands at right about my waist, maybe a little bit below my waist, but from holding this right at my feet or my ankles at the length that I like, the top of the panel lands right at my waist, where I now want to begin sort of decreasing in on the side so I can begin making that sort of slit on the side of the dress. So let's go ahead and do our next few rows here with the decreases, and the number of rows that you do with decreases is really going to be up to you. I will show you exactly what it looks like for me, and again I'll show you the measurements as I have been doing already, but you really just have to play around with it and figure out for yourself how many decreases you want. But essentially we are going to begin decreasing at both the start and the end of each row for as many rows as you want to until the dress is both tall enough and narrow enough. So let's go ahead and get started with our first decrease. So we're going to be doing these rows with linked double crochet as well, because I don't want any gaps in the material. So I already chained 1, so I'm just going to chain 1 more. So then I have 2 chains here, and then I'm going to turn my work. So as I mentioned, we are going to be decreasing at both the start and the end of each row, and the start and the end decreases are slightly different with linked double crochet. So the way we decrease at the start of the row is going to be a little bit different than the way we decrease at the end of the row, so I'll show you in both places. So at the start of the row, instead of inserting my hook into the chain stitch as we normally do with linked double crochet, I'm just going to insert my hook into the very first stitch of the project. So I'm skipping over that chain stitch and just going into the very first stitch of the project. I'm then picking up some yarn and pulling it through that stitch like so. So I now have 2 loops on my hook. I'm then going to jump right over to the second stitch. So I'm going right into this next stitch here, inserting my hook, picking up some yarn and pulling it through that stitch. So now I have 3 loops here on my hook. I'm then going to pick up some yarn and then pull through 2 loops, pick up some yarn and pull through 2 loops. So we just completed a linked double crochet, only we did that with 2 stitches. So the first and the second stitch here, we sandwiched together to make just 1 stitch, and that's a decrease. So now, just like normal linked double crochet, I'm now going to go top down into that horizontal bar of yarn, pick up some yarn, go right into the next stitch, and complete a linked double crochet. So now going forward, we're just going to do these normal linked double crochets. I will not be decreasing at all in the middle of the row, so I'm just going top down into that horizontal bar of yarn, picking up some yarn, and then double crochet into the next stitch. So I'm going to just complete these normal linked double crochets all the way down until I have just 2 stitches left at the end of the row. So I'm going to pause with just 2 stitches left, and then I'll come back and show you how to do the decrease at the end of the row. I have now completed that entire row of linked double crochet, and I've reached the last 2 stitches here of the row. So in these last 2 stitches, I'm first going to start like I'm doing a normal linked double crochet. So into the stitch I just completed, I'm going to go top down into that horizontal bar of yarn and scoop up some yarn like so. I'm then going to go into the very next stitch here, pick up some yarn and pull it through that stitch. I now have 3 loops on my hook, but in order to complete a decrease, I need to go into the next stitch as well. So I'm going to go into the very last stitch like so, pick up some yarn and pull it through that stitch. So I now have 4 loops on my hook. So I'm then going to scoop up some yarn and I'm going to pull this yarn through the first 3 loops. So all 3 of these loops I'm pulling the yarn through. So now I just have 2 loops on my hook. I'm then going to pick up some yarn and pull through the last 2 loops. So that's how you complete a decrease at the end of the row, which is slightly different than how you complete the decrease at the start of the row. But all you're going to do now is just complete a couple more rows here with a decrease at both the start and the end of the row. I am going to do 10 rows of decrease. Again, I recommend that you keep track of the number of rows of decrease that you're doing. That way you can do the exact same number on the other side. And you're just going to keep going until this is both tall enough and narrow enough that you're happy with it. I have now completed 20 rows of linked double crochet with the decrease on both the front and the end of each row. As you can see here, it definitely has that decrease. It's slanting in on both sides. So when I hold it up here, you can see that it is the perfect width. I'm very happy with the width of this. I don't want it to be any narrower or smaller, but I do want it to be a little bit taller before I actually start switching over to the white yarn. So I'm going to go ahead and do about 7 rows of linked double crochet without the decrease on either side. So for your case, if you are happy with the width of the project but you're not quite happy with the height, then you want to stop here and go ahead and just do some normal rows of linked double crochet without a decrease on either side of the row, which is what I'm about to do, just to get the dress to the height that you want before we switch over to the other color of yarn and add the straps and the detailing along the sides. I have now completed all of those rows of linked double crochet. So here's this giant panel that we have here, and when I hold this so it's right above my feet, right at the length where I want the dress to be, the top here covers just about my chest, and then from here up we're going to switch over to white yarn and do sort of the collar and the shoulders. But again, this is 20 rows of decrease and then another 7 rows of no decrease to get to this height here. So now let's go ahead and measure this and then switch over to our white yarn and begin making the straps and the collar for the dress. So first of all, this panel is about 47 inches long now, and second of all, I have now laid out this darker blanket here just so that when I start working with the white yarn, you can actually see what I'm doing. So that's what this is here. So now let's go ahead and cast off, because as I have explained, I am happy with both the height and the width of this dress, and I want to go ahead and switch over to the white yarn to now do the very top of the dress and then add the sleeves and the collar. So I'm going to go ahead and just chain one at the end of this row and then get my scissors, and then I like to cut my yarn leaving quite a bit of a tail behind, that way I can weave in that tail later. So I'm just cutting my yarn and then I pull my hook until that yarn pops right through that chain one stitch, and then I give it a little tug to lock it in place. So we have now casted off here with the dress, and I'm going to bring in my white yarn. So I'm now going to begin using weight 4 cotton yarn in the color white, and I'm still using my same crochet hook. And now I'm going to go ahead and cast on. So I'm going to start by turning my work like so, and then going to the very far right corner on the top of the project. I'm going to go up to this right corner and find the very first stitch and then insert my hook, and then I'm going to get my white yarn and I'm going to just pull it right through that stitch like so. I'm then going to chain 2 like so, and now we're going to begin just doing a normal row of linked double crochet. So just like when you're starting a normal row of linked double crochet, I'm going to insert my hook into the first of those 2 chain stitches and then pick up some yarn, and then I'm going to insert my hook into the exact same stitch that we just casted on from. So this very first stitch here, I'm going to go ahead and insert my hook into that exact same stitch, pick up some yarn and pull it through that stitch, and then pick up some yarn, pull through 2, pick up some yarn, pull through 2. And there's our first linked double crochet stitch. So I can then go top down into that horizontal bar of yarn, pick up some yarn, and then go right into the next stitch here to then complete another linked double crochet. So we're just going to do a normal row of linked double crochet, only now I'm just using the white yarn instead of that purple yarn. I am just going to keep on adding rows of linked double crochet with this white yarn until the dress is the height that I want to then begin adding the straps and the collar. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and do 4 rows of the white yarn, and then I'll be ready to go ahead and start adding the straps onto either side. So I have now added those 4 rows of white to the top here, and now the top of the dress is just a little bit below my collarbone, and it's right where I want to start creating the slope for the collar and build the straps on both sides. So going forward, I'm just going to demonstrate the exact number of stitches and rows that I will be completing for the straps on either side of the top of the dress here, but do keep in mind that you may need to alter the length of the strap or the width depending on what size dress you are trying to make. So I'm just going to show you, like I said, with the numbers that I'm using, but you may need to just try it on or hold it up and see what you like and then adjust as needed. And I have decided that I'm going to work about 16 stitches in on this side, and then on the other side when I do the other strap, I'll be working another 16 stitches in or so. And when you're deciding how many stitches you want to work in for the strap, keep in mind that we will be decreasing on the inside, so we're creating sort of a slope, so you want to overachieve just a little bit. So if I want the strap to be about this wide, I'm going to go out a couple more stitches and say I'm going to start with it about this wide. That way as I go throughout the rows, I can decrease and decrease and decrease and decrease until towards the end the strap is just this wide and we have a nice little slope for the collar. So that's exactly what I'm going to do, and I'm going to start with 16 stitches. At the start here, I'm actually going to go ahead and start with a decrease right on the outside as well. This step is optional, but I do like to just bring this in by 1 stitch. So I'm going to start by inserting my hook right into that first stitch, picking up some yarn, insert my hook into the second stitch, and picking up some yarn. So I now have 3 loops on my hook, and I'm then completing a linked double crochet, and that was our first decrease. So there's our first 2 stitches completed. So now going off of that, I'm going to complete another 14 stitches here of linked double crochet, and in the last 2 stitches I'm going to complete a decrease. So I'm just going to do 12 normal stitches of linked double crochet. That way if we include the decreases on either side, we then have 16 stitches in total. And now I am just 2 stitches away from completing all 16 of these linked double crochets. So in these last 2 stitches, which would bring us up to 16 stitches, I'm going to go ahead and complete a decrease. So at the end of the row, to complete a decrease as we were doing before, I'm going to go top down into that horizontal bar of yarn and pick up some yarn, and then I'm going to go right into the next stitch, which is the 15th stitch, and pick up some yarn, and then I'm going to go into one more stitch, which is our 16th and final stitch, to pick up some yarn. I'm then going to yarn over, pull through 3 loops, and then yarn over and pull through 2 loops to complete that decrease. So this decrease is the start of the sort of slope here that we're making along the collar, and now we're going to go ahead and start row number 2. So I'm going to chain 2 and turn my work. And now I'm going to start with another decrease. So I'm inserting my hook into that first stitch, picking up some yarn, inserting my hook into the next stitch and picking up some yarn. And then pull through 2 and pull through 2, therefore creating another decrease along this side of the row. And now for the rest of the row, I'm just going to do linked double crochets. I will not be doing a decrease on the other end of the row because we only want the decreases to be on the inside of the strap here to create that sort of slope for the neckline. And this side we now want to just be straight because this is the edge of the strap. So I'm just going to go ahead and complete the rest of this row with linked double crochet for row number 2. I have now gone ahead and completed 5 rows here of linked double crochet, just as I had demonstrated, where on this side I am not decreasing, but on this side I am. So as you can see, we have sort of a slope here for the collar as it just rounds right up into the strap. And at this point I am happy with this width for the strap. I don't want it to be any thinner, so I'm going to go ahead and just add one more row onto the top here without any decrease. I'm just going to chain 2 and turn my work, and then I'm going to go ahead and just do 1 row of linked double crochet. I'm going to do it normally without any decrease here at the start of the row or at the end of the row. I'm just doing an entire row of just plain linked double crochet. And you can do as many rows as you need to for this strap. Because we're making the dress in 2 separate panels, you want the top of the strap or the sleeve of the dress to reach the very top of your shoulder, so that way when you make the second panel and you make that strap at the same length, they can touch perfectly right at the top of your shoulder and they're the perfect distance. So you want to go ahead and just make this strap long enough that it rests right at the top of your shoulder. So for me, 6 rows in total is perfect for the strap to reach the top of my shoulder. 5 of those rows I did a decrease, and now for this last row here I am doing no decrease because I'm happy with the width of the strap. So you just need to go ahead and complete as many rows as you need to have the top part here of the strap land right on the top of your shoulder, right in the middle top part of your shoulder basically. So as I explained, this panel and the other panel can line up perfectly right at the top of your shoulder. And when it comes to the collar here, you can decide for yourself how many decreases you want to do along the collar until the strap is the width that you want. But for me, I really like the shape of this. I like the height of this. It all is working perfectly. So let's go ahead and cast off here because this part is completed. So I'm going to go ahead and chain 1 and then cut my yarn. And as always, I cut my yarn leaving a little bit of a tail so I can weave it in later. I'm then just going to pull my hook till that yarn pops right through and then give it a little tug to lock it in place. And now we're going to go ahead and add the other strap to the other side here, which I'm going to add it with the exact same measurements as I did on this side. So I'm just going to find that very far right stitch right here. And I'm going to go ahead and get my yarn, and I'm using the exact same white yarn like so, and I'm just going to pull it right through that stitch and then chain 2. And now just like before, I'm going to start with 1 decrease on this side, which again is optional. I just like the way it looks to start with 1 decrease on the outside here. So I'm going to insert my hook into the very first stitch and pick up some yarn, and then insert my hook into the second stitch and pick up some yarn, and then pull through 2 and pull through 2. And just like on this side, I'm going to work 16 stitches in. The last 2 stitches are going to be a decrease, just as the first 2 stitches were also a decrease. So the exact same number of stitches that I did on this side, I am doing on this side. So that was 2, and now I need to go ahead and do another 14 stitches. I now just have 2 stitches remaining before I reach those 16 stitches. So I'm going to go ahead and do a decrease in those last 2 stitches. So I'm going top down into the horizontal bar of this last stitch here. I'm then going right into the next stitch, which is the 15th stitch, picking up some yarn, and then I'm going into the 16th or the final stitch here, picking up some yarn, pull through 3 loops, and then pull through 2 loops. So there's the start of our next strap completed, and as you can see here, this is the distance between the 2 for reference. So this right here is the collar or the neck hole between the 2 straps, like so. And now I'm going to go ahead and just chain 2 and turn my work, and I'm going to go ahead and start off with another decrease, and I'm just going to repeat on this side the exact same thing I did on the other side. So I'm going to do 5 rows here of linked double crochet with the decrease on this side, and then I'm going to do 1 last row. So in total it'll be 6 rows tall, 5 of those 6 rows have the decrease on the inside here for the collar, just like I did on the other side. So here I have now completed this strap, which is perfectly identical to the first strap that we made. So I'm going to go ahead and cast off now on this side as well. So I'm going to chain 1 and then cut my yarn, and as always I leave a little bit of a tail when I cut my yarn, so that way I can weave it in later, and then I pull my hook, tugging the yarn through and give it a little tug to lock it in place. So here is our very first panel completed. Let me zoom out so you can see a bit better. It's a big panel, so I'm not gonna be able to show you the entire thing here, but this is our very first panel for the dress completed. You should have the straps and the neckline here, and then it should go all the way down and then sort of bloom out towards the bottom here before we start those decreases, and go all the way down into these treble crochets at the bottom of the dress. So I made this super long. It goes all the way down to right above my feet, kind of right at my ankles. And so it's one just long panel. And now what I'm going to do is just take this exact same pattern that I just showed you, and I'm going to take the exact same stitch count and the exact same number of rows, which I've been keeping track of in my notebook. And I am basically just going to copy and paste this panel. So using the exact same stitch counts, the exact same measurements and number of rows, I'm just going to make one more of these exactly identical to the one that I just demonstrated. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I'll see you once I have that second panel made, and we're going to go ahead and attach it then right up here by the straps, and then we'll attach the sides and add the finishing details. After finishing that second panel, and before I cast off on the first strap here, so as you can see I have just the first of the 2 straps completed on the second panel, I'm going to go ahead and just attach this strap to this strap. And if by chance you accidentally already cast it off, that is okay. You can just bring in some new yarn to slip stitch as I'm about to demonstrate. I just prefer to slip stitch before I cast off because it saves me some loose ends to weave in. There's less loose ends. But in this case, I have not cast it off yet, so I'm just going to go ahead and chain 1 like so. And I'm just laying my panels out now with the wrong side facing the outside and the good side facing the inside. So I currently have the good side face up for the bottom panel, and then as I bring in this next panel here, I want to make sure the good side is face down, so that way the wrong side is on the outside. So just like when you're sewing, you want to have the good sides together and then the wrong sides facing out. So now you can see here we have our 2 little shoulder straps lined up, and I want to go ahead and slip stitch. So I'm just going to turn all of this over, that way I can work to the left, which is the way that I typically crochet. And I haven't cast it off yet on this bottom panel here, the one we were just making. So I'm going to go ahead and now slip stitch this strap to this strap. So the way you do this is you're just going to line it up so that all the stitches are lined up correctly. And I know this yarn is very lightly colored, so it may be hard to see, and I apologize for that. But how you slip stitch is I'm going to go ahead and insert my hook into the very first stitch here on the front panel. So on this panel here with this strap, I'm inserting my hook into the very first stitch, and then I'm going to go over to the panel behind it, this panel here. I'm going to insert my hook into the very first stitch of that panel. So I now have the exact same stitch on my hook, where I have that first stitch of the strap or the panel on my hook for both sides. I'm then going to pick up some yarn and pull it through both stitches like so, and then I'm also going to pull that yarn right through the stitch on my hook. So that's a slip stitch, and we want to do this into all the stitches going across this strap here, and we want to make sure it's lined up as evenly as possible. So I'm now going to insert my hook into the second stitch of the strap. Again, it may be hard to see, I know it's very light yarn, but I'm inserting my hook into the second stitch, and then going to the next strap here, the second strap, I'm inserting my hook into the second stitch there. So you want to make sure that you're picking up the same stitch on either side. So in this case, I'm picking up the second stitch on both sides. I'm then going to pick up some yarn, pull it through both stitches, and then also pull it through the loop on my hook. And that is a slip stitch. So now I'm going to go ahead and just attach the straps by slip stitching all the way down here. So I'm just working all the way down this entire strap, and I'm making sure I'm picking up the exact same stitch on both sides. So in this case, I'm picking up the 4th stitch on both sides or both panels. And the main thing when I slip stitch is I try to keep my tension on the looser side. If you're holding your yarn or your hook very tight as you slip stitch, that's going to bunch up the fabric and it's going to cause a weird ripple effect. So to avoid that, I hold my tension quite loose as I just go ahead and slip stitch down the entirety of this strap here, therefore securing these 2 together. So I'm just going to these last few stitches here, and again I'm making sure I'm picking up the exact same stitch on both sides so that way they are evenly placed. And now right into this last stitch here, I'm going to insert my hook into the last stitch on both the front and the back panel. Pull that yarn through, pull it through the loop on my hook. So I've now slip stitched both sides of the strap together, so this is now perfectly attached and this should just comfortably fit right over your shoulder. So I'm going to go ahead and just cast off, so I chain one and then cut my yarn. And now I'm going to go ahead and kind of move this panel out of the way, because as you can see on this side I still have to make that second strap. So I'm going to go ahead and cast on back on this corner and then complete the second strap for this panel, which after I've completed that strap I'm going to pause before I cast off, and we're going to attach this side as well. So now after completing that second strap, now on this side I'm going to do that exact same thing. So I'm just chaining one, and now we're going to go ahead and slip stitch this strap to this strap just like we did on the other side. So just as I demonstrated, I'm starting off by inserting my hook into the very first stitch on this strap or panel, and then I'm going to the strap or panel that's right behind that one and going right into the first stitch on that side as well. So I'm making sure I'm picking up the exact same stitch on both sides. I'm then going to pick up my yarn, pull it through both stitches, and then also pull it through the loop on my hook, therefore completing a slip stitch. And just as I had previously demonstrated, I'm just going to go ahead and slip stitch all the way down, making sure I'm picking up the exact same stitch every single time, and then I'm keeping my tension quite loose as I do so I don't accidentally bunch up the material. So I'm just going to go ahead and slip stitch all the way down this strap here, again making sure it's all lined up correctly as I do so. And now I'm just slip stitching into that very last stitch, and then I'm going to chain one and then cut my yarn, leaving a little bit of a tail. So now we have both of the straps of both panels attached here, and now we need to go ahead and attach the sides of the dress. Okay, so I'm still keeping the wrong side face out for these panels, and I'm just going to lay them out perfectly flat, and I'm going all the way down to the bottom of the dress here. Again, wrong side face up, right side together, just like so. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to slip stitch up both sides of the dress, and we're going to start at the very bottom corner and just work our way up until I reach that point where we begin decreasing. So a little bit up here, once you get to about your waist height, is where we started decreasing the panels, and right where it starts to sort of slope in is where I'm going to stop slip stitching, because I want that to be sort of a cut out along the sides of the dress. So I'm only going to slip stitch up until I start to notice those decreases. So going back down to the bottom of the dress here, I'm at the very bottom right corner, and I'm going to go ahead and insert my hook into that very bottom right stitch here on the front panel, and then the same thing for the back panel, going right into that very bottom right corner stitch like so. I'm then going to get more of that purple yarn, and I'm going to pull it right through those stitches so we can begin slip stitching. So I'm picking up that yarn, pulling it right through the stitches and chaining one to lock it in place. And now we're just going to slip stitch all the way up the side of these panels up until I reach that point of the decrease, as I already mentioned. And we're just going to do this the exact same way that we just slip stitched both of the straps together, only instead of working on the top of the project, we're working into the side of the project. And you'll notice when you work into the side of the project that the stitches look a little bit different, because we're actually working into sort of the post of the project. So as I'm working up this project, because we're working into the height of the stitch, I try to do about 3 slip stitches for each one treble crochet, and then once I reach the double crochet and the linked double crochet, I do 2 slip stitches for each one double crochet, because a treble crochet is 3 chains tall and a slip stitch is the height of a chain, and then the double crochet and linked double crochet is 2 chains tall. So because we're working along the height here, you want to make sure that you're evenly connecting them. So I like to kind of insert my hook into the actual post of that treble crochet, so towards the bottom of the first treble crochet and then towards the bottom of the treble crochet on the other panel, and then I pick up that yarn and just slip stitch like so. And then I go right to the exact same treble crochet, and I'll go kind of right into the middle of that treble crochet and insert my hook right into the post like so, and then do the exact same thing on the back panel here, going sort of into the middle of that treble crochet like so, and then slip stitch. And then one last time I'm going to go right into the top of that treble crochet post, insert my hook, and then do the exact same thing on the other side and slip stitch. Again, I'm keeping my tension quite loose, and I'm making sure I'm picking up the exact same stitches on both sides, and I'm doing 3 slip stitches for each row of treble crochet, and then 2 slip stitches for each row of double crochet. And I'm going all the way up until I start to reach that point of the decrease, and I'm just going to go ahead and slip stitch all the way up this side until I reach that decrease point, and then I'm going to turn my work and slip stitch all the way up the other side as well. So just like we slip stitched the straps together, I'm doing that exact same thing, just going along the side of the dress here on both sides. Okay, so I've slip stitched all the way up on both sides of the dress, and I made sure I slip stitched up the same number of rows on both sides, that way it was evenly spaced. And I went ahead and turned the dress right side out. So as you can see here, there is a little seam going along the side, and then if I were to flip it, you can see there's the rough edge there where I did the slip stitching, so I already turned the dress right side out, and then I already did one side so I can show you for reference. But what we're going to do now is just add this little border to the opening of the dress. So right where I stopped slip stitching, where we then have that sort of cut out along the side of the dress, I'm going to add a little border with my white yarn or my second color here. And it is very simple. It's just linked double crochet all the way around with another row of single crochet. So let's go over to this side here where I haven't done this yet. And you can see here on this opening where I had stopped slip stitching that it's just a raw edge all the way around. So to get rid of that raw edge, to clean it up and make it look a little bit nicer, we're going to go ahead and do that row of white linked double crochet. So I'm going right down to sort of the bottom of the opening here, right where I had stopped slip stitching. I'm going to go into this very first stitch here on this panel like so, and I'm going to go ahead and pick up my white yarn and just pull it right through. I'm then going to chain 2, and then just like how we normally start a linked double crochet, I'm going to go into the first of those 2 chains and pick up some yarn, and I'm then going to insert my hook into the exact same stitch that we just casted on from. So into this exact same stitch that I chained 2 off of, I'm inserting my hook and then completing a linked double crochet. I'm then going to go ahead and go top down into that horizontal bar of yarn, pick up some yarn, and then insert my hook right into the next stitch here and complete a linked double crochet. So I'm just going to repeat this all the way around, and I'm just placing linked double crochets into every single one of these stitches, and I'm going all the way up this back panel, all the way over and on top of the strap here, and then all the way down the front panel until I have done 1 row all the way around this opening. And because we are working into sort of the side of each stitch, it's going to look a little bit different. So just like when we were slip stitching, you just want to go ahead and pay attention to where you're putting the hook, because the side of the stitches do look a little bit different than the top of the stitches. But I'm just going to go ahead and place linked double crochet all the way around the entire opening here on the side for the dress. Again, placing a linked double crochet into each of these stitches all the way around this entire opening here until I have completed 1 entire row, and I'm right back where I started. I have now placed those linked double crochets all the way around the entire opening, as you can see here, and I'm going to go ahead and just slip stitch into the very first stitch of the row. So right here into that very first stitch that we made, I'm going to go ahead and insert my hook right into that first linked double crochet stitch, pick up some yarn, pull it through that stitch, and then also through the loop on my hook, therefore slip stitching that together and making it 1 perfect circle row like so. And now if you wanted to, you could just cast off here, but I do like to add a row of single crochet onto all of the rough edges of my crochet projects. So after completing this row, I'm going to go ahead and chain 1, and then just do 1 row of single crochet on top of this row of linked double crochet. So into every single one of these stitches, I'm going to go ahead and place a single crochet stitch. And again, this is completely optional. I just prefer doing it because I think it cleans up the piece nicely. So on this side, I already did that row of single crochet on top of the linked double crochet. I'm now going to do the same thing on this side, slip stitch and cast off. There is one more step you can do if you want to, and that is to add a row of single crochet along the neckline here or the collar. I will be adding just 1 row of white yarn all the way along there with single crochet, which does the exact same thing, which is just to clean up all the rough edges, and it helps to make this part here, especially with the decreases, look a lot neater. So I'm going to go ahead and add that last row of single crochet there, and then I'm going to weave in all the loose ends, and then that is the completed dress. I really hope that you liked this tutorial and that you found it to be helpful, and I really want to see your finished version of this. So when you finish making this dress, if you want to, feel free to tag me in any pictures that you post of it, or just send me a picture to my Instagram DMs, because I am so excited to see how this turns out for you and what colors you picked. Otherwise, if you have any questions, feel free to leave those in the comments down below. I do my best to respond to all of those. And if you haven't already, please consider subscribing and liking this video. That is what keeps me going, and it allows me to continue creating more of these designs, which I just have the time of my life making these designs. So if you want more crochet tutorials, I've got a whole bunch here on my channel already, and if you subscribe, that will help me to continue creating more. So thank you for doing so in advance. Otherwise, I will see you again very soon with another crochet related video. Until then, I hope you have a wonderful, peaceful, and blessed couple of days. I'll see you again soon. Goodbye.